Today on the playbook, we speak to Aaron Trahan. Aaron's nearly 20-year executive leadership background spans across the corporate and startup environments. Aaron quickly scaled his leadership career, becoming a senior executive of a $1 billion publicly traded company by the age of 30. His unique ability for growing people, elevating teams and organizations, and being a lifelong student of peak performance led him to develop a deep passion for coaching. Aaron is a executive coach, a leadership coach, a performance coach, and today in the episode we will speak about Aaron's 3-out success formula. We will speak about the comfort zone, and we will speak about some of the fuel that you might use in order for you to get to where you need to be. I really enjoyed this episode with Aaron. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you will too. And I hope you will take some value from it. Just before it begins, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the playbook on YouTube or click the follow button on Spotify and rate and review the show. Enjoy. Aaron, thank you very much and welcome to the playbook.
What's up, Ryan? Glad to be here. Looking forward to this discussion.
Cool. So I'm just going to get straight into it. So what? So my first question is, what is the 3-out success formula that you speak about?
Yeah, this is kind of emerged and evolved into a pretty impactful formula that I kind of work with my clients on, and to take a step back to kind of let you know where this originated, kind of what the origin story is. And I remember from when I was an intern, working in a, almost $1 billion company, really just taking everything in. Just, I was a sponge and I wanted to learn all the different tricks, techniques, habits that separated people, especially professionals. What made some professionals continue to find new level after new level after new level of success? And what prevented some from plateauing out? What was it that was the separator? And it really boiled down to me seeing three common threads. And these were the things that I saw in every single one of those professionals that continued to find level after level after level and really just committed to continuous improvement, that was different than a lot of the other professionals who never really rose to their own expectations, never really fulfilled their own potential. And it always boiled down to these three things. First, the successful group, they just always seem to out prepare everyone around them. And their I's were always dotted, the T's were always crossed. They were just so bankable. And knowing that regardless of how formal or informal a meeting was, it was without question. These were going to be the individuals that showed up, had done their homework, knew their due diligence, was the most usually prepared person in the room. Doesn't mean that they were right 100% of the time, but they always did the homework. They were informed. If there was going to be a mistake made, it was not because they didn't do the prep work. It wasn't because they weren't prepared. So that was number one. Number two was they outworked everyone around them. And this is not some hustle culture speak where these people walked around wearing a badge of honor, saying they worked 80 or 90 hours in the prior week. This is much more around productivity. It's much more around optimization and leverage. Look, we all only have 24 hours in a day. We all only have 7 days in a week. We all only have 12 months in a year. These individuals simply found just more ways and more opportunities to get things done. They were far more productive. They were far more focused. They said no to more things to make sure that they had the proper amount of bandwidth and focus they could apply on the most important things. And it just came down to execution. They were always able to just cut through whatever noise existed in an organization, and they just got things done. So they just outworked and outproduced everyone around them. And then lastly, I would argue probably one of the more important of the three was they outlearned everyone around them. So, regardless of their title, regardless of their track record or success, they were usually the best students in the room. So not only did they show up more prepared, not only were they putting in more work and were more productive, but they still found a way to stay in learning mode. They didn't care about themselves being right as much as they cared about just ultimately finding the right solution or the right answer. And so they never let their ego get in the way of them staying in learning mode, being the best student. And as we all know, the best student usually wins. So those were kind of what I now refer to as my 3 out success formula. And as I've looked back over my career over the past 20 years, I have yet to find a single example that anyone has been able to provide me of someone who does these 3 things consistently: out prepare, outwork, and outlearn everyone around them or in their peer group, and they haven't found new higher levels of success.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very, very interesting. So, to give you a bit of context, I'm from a real estate background, and in Dubai, it's commission only. So, I mean,
Mm,
what you kill is what you eat. There's
that's
absolutely
right.
zero wages whatsoever. So, the importance of the hard work is something that's highlighted, but it's not very delved deep into in terms of, okay, what does hard work mean? And you touched
Mm,
on it there, like it's focus. Like in my opinion, the people who can outfocus other people are the ones who will do the best, because there's a lot of people working hard. I mean, the
that's right.
guy who brings out my trash, he works hard. So speaking about that focus, is that something that you see a lot? Is like these high performers and their ability to focus specifically for longer periods of time, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I think you just opened Pandora's box there. I think you hit the nail on the head. And look, here's the harsh truth, right? The more successful you become, the more shiny objects that will exist, the more opportunities that you're going to have. There's the more people and organizations and associations that are pulling at you, right? So the more successful you become, the more in demand you're going to be for fill in the blank opportunity. So I would argue focus only becomes more important and more impactful as you become more successful and kind of rise up whatever corporate ladder or mountain you're climbing, right? And I think you said it. And the the reality is we don't get paid, we don't get rewarded on effort. To your point, whether it's the trash man, the janitor, the teacher, whoever it is, there's a lot of hard work and a lot of effort being put in, but that's not what shows up on the scoreboard. It's results that show up on the scoreboard that we then get rewarded for, right? So if you're putting a lot of effort and energy in the wrong areas that do not generate the right results, you don't get there's nobody that's going to show up and give you that big bonus or medal or recognition for the effort. Once you reach a certain level, look around the room. Everybody got there from working hard. So hard work is not the differentiator once you kind of get up to a certain level, because everybody works hard. So where focus comes in is, can you harness that hard work and effort into the right areas that matter most to then be able to enhance your productivity and optimization to generate more results, to get more things done within that 24 hours time increment that is a level playing field for all of us.
Yeah, and how much of an impact is, or how important is going all in? Like, I mean, like having to focus for long periods of time, and as you said, the shiny object syndrome. Like, is this something that you see that people can kind of part time do, or is it essentially out sacrifice everybody and you have to go all in?
Yeah, I think you've got to find the right balance, because I think what's most important is never never do something that you find is not sustainable, because that's where you're going to ultimately, as they say, the car is going to hit the wall, you're going to burn out, whatever it may be. And so I think the key to mastery is longevity. And so I always recommend my clients is like, yeah, we want to push, we want to stretch, but think over the long term. Is this something that you're going to be able to maintain and sustain for the next 5, 10, 15 years? And if not, what's going to happen when you kind of burn out, when you hit the wall, and that person next to you who has dialed in the sustainability effect to it is going to continue to keep on going. And it's just kind of, I like the rule that Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett always talk about, and it's compound interest. And I think it kind of works for us as professionals, right? And so the worst sin that you can ever make is to interrupt compound interest, right? So when you're putting in that focus on the right things, that hard work, that energy and effort, I do think you need to look out into the future and always ask that stress test of a question is, can I sustain this? Because if not, what what is that going to look like in the future? And so do you run the risk, and I see this all the time, is people really front loading a lot of their effort and focus and getting it up to a certain point, but it's not sustainable. And so once you reach that point of non-sustainability, you run the real risk of unwinding all of the process and progress that you've made. And so, yeah, I kind of think it's an and, right? It's being
Mm.
able to sacrifice, commit, focus, and work hard, but not, I would say, right up to the level, but not surpassing the level that you will be able to sustain over the long term.
Yeah, definitely. And what are the other, like you touched on one there, the element of burnout. Like, what are the main issues that people come to you with as a performance mindset performance coach? Like, what are the other issues that you see commonly within these high performers or these people in leadership?
Yeah, it's three big areas, and one is around prioritization. Um, because I think this is the preface to being able to focus, right? It is, what is the one thing that will always negatively impact your focus? And it's going to be priority mismanagement. And so if everything's a priority, nothing is a priority. And so I kind of like to use the Buffett quote of, what separates, you know, normal people versus the really, really successful people is that the really, really successful people say no to virtually everything, right? And it's because there's this next level type of awareness and clarity around what the biggest priorities are. They become very focused on keeping that most important thing the most important thing. And so, first and foremost, is really around prioritization. And this problem, just like we mentioned with focus, only becomes more difficult to solve for the more successful and the higher growth that you have. Because with more growth and more success comes more priorities, right? And so, it's not as easy as saying this is a priority, this is not a priority. What happens to a lot of successful people is they're now having to get into the detail of what are the top priorities of these other high priorities, right? And that can be difficult to do because everything looks good. Everything is of interest. Everything on that list could be of value that kind of generates better performance. So it's kind of shrinking down that list of 20 things down to the two or three over the next 3 months that really is going to, warrant your harnessed focus. And then once you get the prioritization piece in place, then that and only that is then what unlocks the focus. So many professionals that I work with, the most successful ones, battle the focus issue. And so before we even start to tackle the focus issue is we tackle the prioritization issue. And then focus starts to get a lot easier. And that's where we can start working of I almost kind of give them a no quota. It's like, how many times are you saying no on a weekly basis to something, right? Because that's going to ultimately determine your focus is how many other things are you saying no or not yet to. And then the third big one, after prioritization, after focus, then comes accountability. And if the only person that we're accountable to is that voice inside of our own head, we're going to be in trouble, right? Life just has a way of throwing all kinds of um, distractions that are disguised as easy opportunities at us, right? And so I always recommend people using some form of a external accountability mechanism. Who are you going to be accountable to? Who are you having to turn in progress reports to? And then who is going to help you measure and track progress on your most important priorities? And I think if you get those three things right, that solves 90% of the problems that professionals face with really tapping into peak performance. Um, Easily said, it sounds very basic, sounds very simple, but as you well know, when you're in the heat of battle, when you're growing, when you're already successful, there's a lot of things being thrown your way almost on a daily, weekly basis. Staying consistent to executing those three things at a world class level is very complicated. And so that's where I help is really remove the complication with providing them a system driven framework that always really helps them enhance their ability to prioritize, which then enhances their focus. And then I help them stay accountable to making the progress they want to make.
Yeah, you touched on it there in terms of the voice in their head. So when we see people who are high performers, whatever that means in anybody's definition, or leaders or successful people, we like to assume that they have it all figured out, that you would like to swap their lives for where you currently are from to where they are currently. You wouldn't like to trade, obviously, A, how they got there, or B, maybe the voice in their head. Do you find that there is some conflict with people? Like, what is the internal state of some of these people? What is that voice in their head? How do they speak to themselves when nobody else is around? And what does that look like?
Yeah, that I tell people all the time. I was actually speaking to I was speaking to a group of young leaders here in Austin a couple weeks ago, and I told them, I had a lot of early success, right? I was able to achieve a senior executive position of $1 billion publicly traded company by the age of 30. And here's what I wish someone would have told me back then that I'm telling people now. And that is that there is a comfort zone that lives inside every single one of us. And that comfort zone, that voice from inside the comfort zone, is always going to speak loudest after we achieve success. And that voice is going to tell us, look at what we've achieved. We've got it all figured out. We've made it. We've arrived. Look at how great we are, right? And think about how we're programmed. You kind of think about going back to our childhoods. We're programmed to work hard up front, achieve the status, the financial means, the success that we want, and then we don't have to work as hard, right? That's kind of how we're all programmed, right? So it's exactly when that voice tries to show up and convinces us that hey, we can take our foot off the accelerator a bit now. Look, we've arrived, we've made it. Um, and the second that you start believing that voice, that's when all the problems start to happen. That's when you stop growing. That's when you stop, becoming coachable. It's when you're going to stop striving for continuous improvement. Um, and so, yeah, that voice is it's a great storyteller. It's going to give you every reason in the world to say, hey, you can stop and smell the roses a little bit here. And so it's a very dangerous position when you start kind of believing the narrative that that voice inside the comfort zone is trying to sell you. And the one warning that I provide a lot of young leaders who are starting to experience success is, you almost need to have a little dose of paranoia, because a lot of times what happens, it's our current success that can actually be the very thing that prevents our future success. Because this is when that voice is going to show up. This is when we start feeling like we can start, coasting a little bit, or putting it in cruise control, or, fill in the blank, whatever kind of emotion you're feeling there. And that's exactly how it's so easy to slide from the growth mode into kind of the comfort mode. And yeah, it's a very challenging battle to fight.
Yeah, I was smiling because like people who know me know that that's my biggest fear in life is the complacency. It's feeling comfortable. It's not growing or not learning. For me, it feels like sometimes I take that to the opposite extreme, where it's like I'm I'm so afraid that I will be comfortable or in my comfort zone or not growing that I'm not acknowledging some of the things that I've achieved, and it's taken away from the present moment and that I'm living in
Mhm.
the future. For anybody else who's struggling with that, is there any insight you could provide on that?
Yeah, yeah. There's this concept that I like to share. Um, it's really around mindset, right? So when you kind of think about, especially high performers like us, that's how we're wired, right? We're always looking at the gap between where we currently are and where we want to be, where we know we can get to, where we know our full potential is. And so, if not harnessed correctly, that gap mindset can really turn into some negative emotions, some negative feelings that no matter what you've achieved, you're never meeting your own expectations. And so it kind of gives you that feeling like it's never enough, never be satisfied. And look, I'm not saying we need to remove that and take it completely off the table, because I do think it's a powerful fuel. It needs to be there. It needs to keep us, pushing and striving and climbing up the mountain. But my advice is never allow it to be more than 50% of your mindset, and really then go and look at the gain side of it, right? So if 50% is going to be that piece of saying, I'm here, but I know I can be higher, I know I can be up here, um, not to let that consume your overall thought process. And you can do that by balancing out, going back to where you started. Look at how much you've gained. Look at how far you've come from where you've started to where you're at now. And so that's what I call the gain mindset, right? It's like, look how far I've come. And I think it's all about striking that right balance between the gain versus the gap, and never letting one of those for too long of a period of time exceed that 50%, and always kind of maintaining that balance of rewarding yourself, kind of acknowledging all that you've accomplished, while also knowing that there's so much more left you still want to achieve.
Yeah, and that's something that I know I struggle with, and many people in my industry struggle with as well. And I think anybody who aims for something greater in life, it's okay, I've used this fuel to get me to where I am now, but will this be the fuel that will get me to the extra yards? And that ability of losing the kind of fuel that got me to here, and kind of leaning back into that. And in moments in your life, do you feel like that you have to lean into different sorts of fuel? Because obviously when you're in your 20s, the kind of fuel you're going to use in your 20s will be different in your 30s or your 40s. Your priorities change, and the reasons as to why you're doing it would change.
Yeah, for sure. And the one thing that I try to guide people on is not to get too caught up in external comparisons. You kind of think about it as a scoreboard, and stay committed to continuous improvement, right? And so the big comparison that you should be making is, are you better today than you were yesterday? And then how can you get better tomorrow than you are today? So if we think about it from a scoreboard standpoint, instead of, if you're the home team, instead of the away team being some other comparison in your industry, your network, what you're seeing on LinkedIn or Instagram, cancel all that out. The away team should be just the prior version of you from yesterday. And your focus on just being, and I know as cliche as this sounds, is just making that steady, consistent 1% continuous improvement on a day over day basis. And I think, you know, when we're battling the ego or when we're kind of looking out and just those thoughts start to arrive, I'm just not where I thought I would be or where I want to be, really bring the focus back on the present and saying, yes, I may get those sensations when I zoom out, but try to zoom in. And if you just stack together months, years, and decades of this continuous improvement approach of just continuously getting better, you'll always be able to look back over a 6 month period, 12-month period, 2 year period, and be astonished with the progress, the growth, and the success that you'll find. Because it's easy to look out to the future and say, I want to be there, but I'm not there yet. And that generates some negative feelings and negative emotions. But when you just look at really breaking it down to the smallest bite-sized increments, when you go to sleep at night feeling comfortable and confident that you got better today than you were yesterday, when you can stack up as many of those days as possible, that's the single best cure for this, this mindset of I'm trying to use the fuel to kind of get ahead. The
Mm.
best way to get ahead is just to keep showing up and be a better version of you today than you were yesterday. And if you do that consistently at a world class level of execution, 9.9 times out of 10, everything else takes care of itself.
Mm. And what importance does do kind of your overarching goals or kind of goal setting in terms of that continuous improvement, and what do those goals look like, and what do you recommend to your clients?
Yeah, I think it's really, really important, right? I kind of think about this as, look, if we were to take out our phones and we opened up the Google Maps app, right? That tool only works for us when we can plug in two critical data points: our current location and our destination. If we don't have either one of those, the tool's not going to work. And so when you think about goal setting and the milestones that help you stay on your goal, I think we have to look at ourselves and say, where is my current location? What is my current state? Where is my destination? Maybe not the final end all be all destination, but where's my future state? Where do I want to be? What do I want to look like? Where do I want to, what do I want to achieve and by when? That's going to give you the two critical data points that will allow you to then build that route to get there, right? So if your current state is X, your future state is Y, and you want to be there within the next 12 months, then it kind of becomes a reverse engineered working backwards exercise, right? So if I know that those are my two data points and I'm going to build a route to get there, great. What needs to be true over the next 6 months for me to be on track to achieve this future state, to get to this future destination over 12 months? Unwind it from there. So if I need to be there, if this needs to be true, if this must be achieved in 6 months, where do I need to be in 3 months to be on track for my 6 month target? Rewind it even further. Look at it a 30-day look back. And so I think you can reverse engineer all the critical milestones on the route that you've built once you have that current state, future state, and by when, to really start building in the short-term milestones that allow that third piece that we talked about at the very beginning, the accountability aspect. So now when you kind of build out this route, you know where you need to be at the end of this week, at the end of the next 30 days, at the end of the next 60 days, at the end of the next 6 months to be on track to achieve that 12-month target. And I think there's two big things that we must bring up around goal setting. And when you see goals fail, either from a personal level or from an organizational level, greater than 95% of the reasons failures occur comes down to two very important things. Number one is a lack of tracking and measuring, right? People always, people always put these goals out there. It's like you think about New Year's resolutions, right? I want to lose 50 pounds. Well, great. What's your week one goal? How do you know if you're going to be on track? And a lot of people don't know. It's like, well, I don't know. I just like that's just the outcome that I want. And there was this interesting study done, I believe, by the High Performance Institute that broke 19,000 people in the study down into different cohorts. And what they found was this: the cohort that set a goal but had no tracking or measuring system in place performed no better than the cohort that didn't even have a goal at all. And so, if your audience takes nothing away from this conversation, let it be this: that if you don't have a robust tracking and measuring system as part of your goal framework, you're not going to perform any better than someone who doesn't even have a goal to begin with. It's that important. And I think the other thing, that the reason number two why goals fail, is people are too focused on the outcome and there's not enough focus on the short term process. And it kind of goes back to, if you want to be at this place in 12 months, great. That's not where you should be focused, though. Where you should be focused is on that reverse engineered system of, where do I need to be in week one that's going to keep me on track to achieve what I need to achieve in the next 30 days. And when you look at goals, you see that missing in so many places, is that the focus is too much on the outcome and not enough on the short-term inputs.
Yes, but like, so something that I struggled with the whole kind of goal setting thing is in, like, when you're speaking using that kind of Google Maps analogy. So I've been clear on my start points, like so many other people have been clear on the start points, not so clear on the end point. But because the start point is so awful to get away from, that all I'm doing is just driving as fast away from that point. Something that I recently struggled with is, okay, after I'm far enough from that start point, taking a look around and being like, oh, I'm not even going nearly in the right direction here. I've been
Mm-hmm.
so focused on driving from the start point and not clear on the end point that I'm just driving straight down, and I'm just not even looking up. I'm just putting a foot on the gas and just driving straight away.
Yeah.
How does someone go about that course correction after a period of driving in the wrong direction?
Yeah, I think the best guidance I could give there is to, it's almost a pause, right? And so if we're using the GPS kind of analogy here, I think that's the very moment. Find the rest stop, find the gas station off on the side of the interstate, get there as fast as possible, put the car in park and say, I missed a step here. I know where my current location, I know where my current state is, but I'm driving to a destination that's unclear or not built out, not defined. I think the immediate next step is actually putting in the thought work, the strategic work, really understanding is, where is it that I'm trying to go? Because direction is far more important than speed. And so you kind of think about this like a Titanic, right? Or a big cruise ship. It is far more easy for these big vessels to speed up or slow down than it is to reverse course and go the opposite direction, right? Speeding up or slowing down could be done in seconds or minutes. Doing a complete 180, may take hours, right? And so, to your point, when you optimize speed, you know, especially before direction, the mistake that I see a lot of people make is, yeah, they're gearing up, they're going 100 miles an hour, but if you're going 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction, it could actually do more long-term damage than it would to go really, really slow right now and optimize that destination. Once that destination and once you're clear on the direction is in place, it's a hell of a lot easier to increase and accelerate speed. But going speed before direction could actually just take you further and further away from the place that you want to get to. And so I think first and foremost is, yeah, really putting in, pulling over, making that exit, getting to the rest stop, and kind of thinking about where is it that I want to get to? Why do I want to get there? Why is it important for me to be there? By when do I want to be there? And then kind of going through that reverse engineering is, okay, well, what do the necessary milestones need to look like to keep me not not focused on that destination, but harnessing that focus on the very next milestone. Those things for you to be where you want to be, that destination, and by whatever the by when date is, what things must be true by when for you to be on track to get there. And then that's where you can harness your focus and it becomes a bit more executable. You're not now just focused on the very tip top of the mountain. You've created a series of different base camps along the way where your focus can be here instead of here and just constantly looking at the top of the mountain, because what happens is there's going to be obstacles, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be curveballs thrown at you. And so if the only view that you have is from where you're currently at, looking up at the very tip top of the mountain, when that first storm comes in, that climb just looks so effing far that it knocks so many people out of the game or off course. And that's why you need those series of base camps along the way up to keep you focused on shorter term milestones that you've identified are the absolute things that must be true by when to keep you on track to reach the top of the mountain at some point in the future.
And is that how you recommend to deal with uncertainty? Because I mean, a lot of men who would be listening to this, a lot of people in their twenties who have these massive overarching goals of these massive mountains to climb, and the uncertainty of knowing, okay, am I even walking the right path? Will I make it? And that uncertainty can almost be crippling at times. Is that your anecdote, or is that your antidote to that uncertainty? Is having those base camps?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a great technique to keep the focus in the right place that helps keep the right short-term priorities intact. But I think what you're speaking about is really developing a higher level of self-awareness and clarity around what even the top of the mountain looks like, right? Do we know that we're climbing the right mountain? Are we on the wrong damn mountain? Is another
Mm.
big question. And I think and that's where I think you've got to get really in tune with not only what you're pursuing, but why you're pursuing it. Because you may understand the what, and the what shows up in a lot of different ways: bigger title, a certain number in the bank account, status, whatever it may be. But if the why piece is missing, that's just going to open up a whole different level of mistakes. You're letting outside influences like society or your industry, your networks kind of define for you what success looks like. And speaking from personal experience, I've been there, I've done that, I've lived through this, and I can assure you there's only one thing more painful than not achieving the goal that you really want to achieve. And that's achieving a goal that you realize after the fact was the wrong goal to begin with. Um, and so I think, the one word that really shows up here is alignment. Are you authentically aligned? And I kind of like to think about this when I'm working with the new clients, we may spend our first few sessions just tackling this alignment piece that I kind of broke down into three questions that I'll kind of give to your audience here. And number one, the thing that we have to answer, and it's kind of interesting, if you go and test this out, use this weekend to ask this to random people, and what you'll find, typically about 80% of people do not have a good answer to this question. And it's simple. How are you defining success for yourself? Not what it's supposed to look like for someone in your position or what your network or what society kind of deems success, but when you look yourself in the mirror, for you to determine that person looking back at you as a success, can you boil that down into a one, two, three sentence kind of elevator pitch? So, success for Brian is this, and really getting clear and crystallize on what that answer is and why you are determining success for yourself in this way. The second question to answer as the follow up to that is, what does authentic fulfillment look like for me? Because if you achieve success and you're not fulfilled and you don't feel authentic in your journey towards achieving it, there's one guarantee that I can make to you is that winning will not feel like winning. If you're having to sell your soul or do all these things to achieve this definition of success, but you're not fulfilled by doing that, it doesn't feel authentic to you, I can guarantee you it's not going to feel like winning whenever you reach whatever destination that you have set up, right? So not only do you need to know how you're defining success for yourself, but you also need to know what fulfillment and authenticity looks like on your path to get it. And then the third question is kind of the calibration question. And that is based on your definitions of question one and question two, are these two things on the path that you're currently on, are these two things in alignment or do they conflict with each other? And usually around 80% of people find out after we go through this exercise, they're kind of saying like, damn, yeah, there's complete misalignment with what I've thought to be success and what I'm thinking, fulfillment, authenticity feels like. And so I think when you can drive alignment between those two things and you can ensure that those two things are now working in harmony with each other and not in conflict with each other, I think that's going to be the single greatest guardrails that you can put on both sides of the road on that route that you're creating to your destination.
Aaron, thank you. I really, really appreciate that. Finally, what is your mission? What is your mission?
Yeah, I think it's my mission is to really help leaders tap into their full potential. And I think right now we live in a world full of the vast majority of leaders who are responsible for leading people, organizations, and teams operating far below what their full potential is. And that symptom rolls downhill. So their teams are now operating at less than full potential. And so my mission is really to help more leaders, more organizations tap into their full potential and operate at their peak performance. And I think when more and more of the leaders across the world do this, the the benefits start to compound. And that's where we create that compound interest that we should never interrupt, in the famous words of Charlie Munger.
Absolutely, absolutely. And where can my audience find you?
Two places I show up most. First, on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. I'm always trying to add value to my community. So I highly encourage your audience. Let's connect on there. Let's have a discussion. Be happy to help in any way, shape, or form that I can. And two would be my website, and that's performancemindsetcoaching.co. So you can find more about the different programs, the methodology, the approach on how I help leaders there. But those are the two places that I show up to the most.
Cool, perfect. Thank you again, Aaron. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.